better outcomes. A roundtable panel brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. And before I introduce our expert panelists and our partner sponsor, let me share some brief housekeeping items. First, we'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our experts questions. Second, this webinar is CPE eligible with 4 polling questions, so please answer each poll for CPE or answer to benchmark your peers. Please allow up to 1 week for CPE certificates via email. Also regarding CPE, you'll receive a brief survey directly after this webcast, so please complete. And finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. Now a word from our sponsor and partner. Billtrust is a B2B order-to-cash software and digital payments market leader. Billtrust helps the world's leading brands move finance forward with AI-powered solutions to transition from expensive paper invoicing and check acceptance to efficient electronic billing and payments. With more than $1 trillion in invoice dollars processed, Billtrust delivers business value through deep industry expertise and a culture relentlessly focused on delivering meaningful customer outcomes. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our subject matter experts, or SMEs, and our panelists, Joy Mbanugo, Mike Passifione, and Todd Bailey. Joy is Chief Financial Officer of Sky, or CXAI, a Palo Alto-based technology startup. Her 20-year career includes CFO at Service Rocket, a controllership office at Google, where she managed $100 billion in cash at one point, and FP&A at BlackRock, and a 12-year at EY. Joy is also a private investor and limited partner in various funds, including women-led ventures. She holds a Juris Doctorate from Cleveland State, Master of Accountancy from Case Western Reserve, and a double bachelor's degree in accountancy and Black World Studies from Miami University of Ohio. Mike Passifione is Vice President of Pre-Sales and Payments at Billtrust and a former Wells Fargo executive. Mike studied at California Polytechnic State University. And Todd Bailey is Chief Business Officer of X-Golf America, with F&A responsibilities, and a former controller and business intelligence director at Relativity Software. Todd had a 4-year stint in public accounting at Crow, and he earned a master's and BS in accounting from University of Illinois. Welcome, Joy, Mike, and Todd.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
You are quite welcome. So before we get started on the panel, I was just going to turn it over to Mike to give a quick overview of Billtrust, and we'll go on video as well.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So thanks for having me. Pleasure to meet, be able to speak with you all today, be with folks like Joy and Todd to talk a little bit about finance and accounting, and just to give you a little bit of background on how Billtrust plays in that environment. As Neil mentioned, I have some background with some of the major banks and some of the some payment technology companies prior to Billtrust. But what made Billtrust really unique and intriguing to me when I joined 8 years ago was the ability to have an impact in the accounts receivable space. Billtrust was kind of at the forefront of that 20 plus years ago, and definitely a leader in that market. As we go to market today, it's really centered around an entire order to cash automation process. You'll see here kind of on the left-hand side of the screen, a visual that's centered around AI and analytics. So we understand that from an accounts receivable perspective, we deal with folks of different varieties of payers, right? People that want to slow pay. We've got folks that are using advanced AP technology, and our whole existence and goal is to help suppliers get paid and drive better practices and automation around the entire accounts receivable solution. So AI and analytics helps drive that for us, right? We try to power our entire solution with tools to allow CFOs, CEOs to make better decisions within the accounts receivable realm. And you'll see within the inner rim of that, we have a number of different modules to really help our suppliers or suppliers out there in the market get paid faster, cleaner, and cheaper. That's the way I kind of really think about it. But that starts from the very beginning, from how we issue credits to customers and all the way to the very end, and when sometimes they fall into collections. So you'll see within that order to cash wheel, there's a number of different ways in which we help streamline that process. So we understand that, you know, having the ability to collect a payment at a point of sale type of scenario is important. There's a number of ways in which we invoice customers now today. Buyers and customers want to be invoiced in several different ways. And then of course you want to be able to collect payments and all the different modalities and different touch points with your customers on the cash application and collection. So really important piece. We're excited about all the ability to help. What I'll say is, you know, our suppliers mainstream their AR processes and keep up with some of the progressing AP world out there. But Neil, thanks for the quick intro there, and we'll probably go a little bit more into this in detail as we go on.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Mike. And let's get to our first panel question. Let's open up with just a background question. Tell us about your company, your accounting and finance organization, and perhaps your AR department and or function. Joy, would you like to start?
Sure. So CXAI, pronounced Sky, is a, as Neil mentioned, publicly traded company here in the Bay Area. So from a finance and accounting standpoint, I'm actually the second CFO. The CEO was previously the CFO, which is always fun. That happened to me in my previous CFO role. So stepping in, taking over from him, and we've had some fun conversations about automation because he's an engineer. So it's been helpful in this, right? And maybe not so much from a technical accounting standpoint. I'd love to give him a hard time about that. But for the rest of the team, I have a fully, almost like 90-ish% offshore team. And then locally have a contract controller and very heavily used advisory firms. And I think in previous conversations with controller counsel in my previous role, I also had a heavily offshore team. So I could talk a lot about offshore teams and automation and AI and just coming up with process and procedures that make sense around the globe.
Neat. Todd, how about yourself?
Sure. Should point out just for the record, I'm currently pursuing new opportunities. So X-Golf is a great company. It was had a great time there, and they're going to continue to do big things. My experience, the last two experiences, 10 plus years at a software company, Chicago-based, Relativity. Unlike Joy, who's in the public space currently, my experience is mostly with privately owned companies that had a technology aspect to them. Also, most of my experience is building from the ground up rather than inheriting existing functions and trying to put the next couple stories on there. And I think that there's unique challenges too when you're kind of almost starting from scratch, and you got to decide where you're going to start and what challenges you're going to tackle. So we could talk about those more as we go on here. Let's see what else. Also, I'd say the common threads from my experience that I think is relevant when you're having these conversations is, and kind of more on the tail of the tape, is these are more like lower volume. The receivables and billing is lower volume, but there's just more, like, I'd say, complexities on how you're constructing those invoices. So it's not necessarily like a volume challenge that you're dealing with. It's more, how do you connect all the dots and automate the process so that you know, you can take the manualness as much as you can out of the process.
Got it. Well, thanks for that. And Mike, from your perspective, why don't you tell us about some of the clients and customers that you work with and their departments?
Yeah, we work with clients all over the globe, ranging from a couple $100 million in revenue to several billion. So a lot of experience in that space. Billtrust really focuses in on, again, making sure that we have the ability to, one, invoice all of your clients in all the ways they want to be invoicing. So this world is changing vastly, the ways in which you typically invoice a customer and the ways in which you get paid. So as you can imagine, across all different sizes of suppliers, they have all different size types of buyers, and those buyers behave in different ways, and they each have different, we'll call it middle of the ground or middle rows that we have to find ways for supplier and buyer to engage with each other. So we're very focused on creating, oftentimes it goes into the payment side of the world, where we're trying to create acceptance policies for our suppliers that meet the buyer and the supplier in the middle, so that we can ultimately have an ecosystem that works really clean together, and we're expediting the accounts receivable process for our clients. So
sounds good. Well,